Jon Vest is the Extension Agent for Floyd County with the Virginia Cooperative Extension. His expertise helps novice and experienced farmers produce quality livestock and crops throughout our region. Jon has offered to share his experiences with our audience and provide them with the knowledge to keep agriculture strong. This is the Ag Show with Jon Vest.
Welcome back, viewers. We find ourselves in a familiar spot from that of the past segments where we've talked about apple and pear tree pruning. And today we're back to visit this particular block of trees because there's a few that we've left for the very end. And when I say those few, it has to do with the stone fruit trees, or the peaches and the nectarine and the like, that have been left here to the end of our pruning activity, largely because when it comes to apples and pears versus our stone fruit in general, we like to prune our stone fruit last. The reason being is largely, as you can see in the tree behind me, we're already starting into pink, or really nearing the end of our pruning window. But that given, the sap flow is already really beginning in this tree. And if we had decided to prune, and today, in the event that cold weather was coming or being promised in the next 2 to 3 days, in the event, like say a 3-day icing event or any type of polar vortex or cold weather after our actual pruning, everywhere we make a pruning cut in stone fruit varieties, there runs the potential for damage or a freezing injury from the point where we've pruned back several inches beyond and behind where we pruned before. So, starting with the tree behind me here, this peach tree that we have preparing to bud out or is already broken bud, we're going to demonstrate to our viewers the proper techniques used in pruning stone fruit. That's your peaches, your nectarine, even plum, and to some degree. But with respect to, we don't leave a central leader system like what you've seen in the apple trees that we pruned in the last segment. We try to prune these types of trees to a very open Y shape, or some would call the vase shape practice, that allows for a maximum amount of sunlight to gain entry to the center of the tree. And probably there's nothing more important than sunlight when it comes to ripening and providing the ideal season for peaches and nectarine development. As we continue to look at this tree here, there is lots of developmental wood, and it is setting itself up for peach production this year very, very nicely. What we'd like to see, particularly in stone fruit, because it actually fruits on that most recent year's growth. Unlike apples and pear, where its fruiting buds are born on spurs that are on second year wood or older, all of your peach development, most of your peaches for this upcoming season, we're actually looking at right here. And this is an ideal peach branch with regards to what I would be looking for to leave behind once my pruning has been accomplished. I am looking for these branches that are roughly the size of a number 2 pencil. They are going to provide the necessary nutrient flow back and forth, the stability in which the peaches have to support the fruit load itself. Anytime I get into the weaker, smaller branches, or the smaller shoots that are smaller in diameter than your average number 2 pencil, I end up in a situation where it just doesn't have enough nutrient flow or support to the developing fruit to have them enlarge and become the peaches we enjoy. So in many cases, I will be taking out lots of the weak, small branching that, unless it's directional and is providing me some future limb structure, a lot of that material will come out. We'll also look in stone fruit, you'll find lots of small branches that are actually dead from the previous year. So all that type of material comes out because it's basically a sink on that tree. The tree is trying to support nutrients out that dying or decaying branch at the same time while supporting the fruiting wood on the relative other sides of the branch. And what we end up with is kind of everyone doing poorly with respect to the fruit load. Anytime I can have nice fat branches, such as what we have here in front of us, and anytime I can fit a fist in between my fruiting buds as I make my way up, I'm creating an ideal spacing and developmental branch for a peach tree. Viewers, we're fortunate to have, in this particular case, a real good indicator of what is your potential fruit for the season and what is going to be additional limb structure or branch structure off these shoots that we're looking at. In fact, all these buds that you see swollen right here and they have that little bit of pink, those are your flower buds. Every bit of these large swollen areas are your fruit for this season. Now, along the edges or along, alternate sided as we move on up, we'll find vegetative buds because every cluster of fruit does need to have enough leaf tissue and leaf development to really feed back into that developing fruit. So once again, it still applies. We cut just above a bud in the direction we'd like our branching to go. But in the case of stone fruit, peaches, nectarines, and apricot, we need to remember that any cuts that we're making, we are potentially removing our actual fruit production for the season. Viewers, when we have that opportunity to really start looking and examining the tree that we're going to prune, there are those things and steps, I think, that are necessary to really identify maybe some problem areas within a tree that if we leave unchecked or they make it through our pruning process, will contribute to problems later on. In the example of peach trees and nectarine or stone fruit in general, I'll just remind the public that's out there, if you've had a healthy tree that's been doing well for a number of years, particularly in the case of stone fruit in Southwest Virginia, and suddenly that tree starts to have issues or appear like it's dying back, you have lots of dead wood, maybe as much as 30% up in the upper canopy, or you see major limbs starting to die back, and for it's basically an unexplained reason as to why that's occurring, I start looking for those areas in the tree that are responsible for my transport of water and nutrients up and down. And immediately my investigation will turn to the base or the trunk area down below. In the case of this tree here, we have its obvious original graft union where we tend to get that swelling right there where the rootstock is joined to its parent variety. But at the same time, if this tree was experiencing dieback, I'd actually be examining these areas very, very closely for a problem that we have here in Southwest Virginia and certainly in Floyd County with two insects. They are called the peach tree borer and the lesser peach tree borer. Lots of their damage actually goes sight unseen because they're not up here in the trunk, but they're actually working below soil level, as many as 4 to 6 inches deep. And when I see a tree that has performed wonderfully for a number of years, but suddenly within a season really starts to go down, I can 99% of the time dig down right there at the base, just with my hands, move the mulch and stuff away. As I start to dig into the soil, maybe just hand deep, I'll run into a gelatinous goo and mess where the borers of that insect have made their way into the trunk, and the tree continues to frass and try to push insects out, but they have girdled that actual developmental cambium layer just below the soil level. And with unable to provide the transport up and down and continue like it normally would, I start to see the upper portions in the tree suffer. Viewers, if you do run into a situation where insects such as the peach tree borer, lesser peach tree borer, have made their way in and are damaging and girdling the base of your tree, it's important to address that injury and or insect as quickly as possible, because in many cases we've lost a season sight unseen to their initial progression. That said, there's a number of different insecticides, and we encourage you to contact the Extension office. Certainly, as with any product, chemicals are just one tool that's within our toolbox of available protections when we're talking about trees and fruit production. Chemicals usually being a last resort. And fortunately or unfortunately for stone fruit, the ideal window of spray and opportunity is right there when the peaches and our stone fruit are coming in for harvest. So we absolutely, in the particular case of those chemicals, like to go wait till harvest, collect our peaches and nectarines as quickly as possible, all things permitting, and then we'll make the application there to that lower base and soil line for those specific insects. Viewers, if you are using your tools between different trees, I do want to remind you always, whether it's an alcohol solution, maybe a little mouthwash, there's a number of different sanitizing agents we can choose to use. I do prefer a little bit of alcohol just to spray my pruners down before I get started, particularly if I've moved from tree to tree. If I encounter a particular area that I feel is diseased within this tree, then I'll actually make another application to sanitize my shears and or my loppers and things before I make an additional cut, having worked on that diseased section. Well, viewers, welcome to the top of a peach tree in Floyd County. What we have here, once again, is a limb off the peach tree we were just viewing. And you can see right now, it certainly has a desire to continue growing up. And like I've mentioned, I'm looking to reduce its overall size, but more importantly, its weight. And by removing this upper branch or this main section in the center here, I'm going to then trim back to the lateral branches and leave plenty of peaches for the homeowner to enjoy, but at the same time, give this tree or give this branch at least another year of or opportunity to build girth in its system so that one day it can withstand the peach loads regardless on this particular limb. As we start here, my pruning cut that I'd like to make is actually relatively close to 2 lateral shoots. And I'm not going to try to get in there and make a precise cut initially. I'm just going to take the bulk of the weight out of this particular limb very, very quickly, but it's going to be above my ideal pruning cut. I'll then come back in and with the right tools, make the right cut. What I'm looking for is to develop a system of branching that's going to provide a relatively directional development so that the tree can have plenty of peaches in years to come. And like I've mentioned, while some of these branches are ideal sized to produce this year's peaches, if I leave them and they remain through this season, the resulting wound or pruning cut that I make next season is only going to be larger and more stressful on the tree. So I kind of like the distribution and everything I have there. I like everything about that. I need to remove some undesirable sinks, these little shoots that are not going to be nearly as productive. By leaving these branches in place and certainly these buds to continue developing, the homeowner is going to have a nice peach crop. That being said, we're still faced with always that late spring frost or freeze. And I'd like to remind homeowners and or anyone that is pruning their peach trees and stone fruit, don't be alarmed by a frost or freeze. In all seriousness, when a peach is setting itself up particularly in its flowering for fruit load each year, there's so many peaches and so much fruit on the tree, they will never truly develop in size unless they're thin. In a commercial situation, we actually prune in some cases to thin the tree at that time. So we'll prune to get ideal branching and a reduction in actual blooms up in the canopy. That said, there's a timing in every year, we call it June drop, when your stone fruit naturally get to the point that they understand there's too much fruit remaining on the tree. So for those of us that are concerned when you start to see our stone fruit drop, developing fruit there in that second week in June, particularly here in Floyd County, don't be overly concerned. That's Mother Nature's way and that tree's way of identifying, hey, we're going to have some nice fruit up here for you to enjoy. We're going to drop some of these smaller fruit away and put our energy into that fruit production. What I'm basically trying to do here, viewers, is remove lots of this small, unnecessary material out of these branches first. In our first scene, it was a very, very busy branch. And once again, all these little shoots are little or no use in a developing peach situation. Even a shoot as small as this right here, while it's doubled up in some peach bloom, may actually not be very productive in its overall size. So I'm making a decision to reduce these thin shoots that we see here down about to the point that I have a finished product above me now. Taking a look now, the after effects of a light pruning job, I've chosen to leave a few branches that could be questionable, but when you or I are doing the pruning, the entire process is truly up to us. I'm leaving this shoot this year because I like the peach development I see going up. Next year, that upright shoot would certainly be removed off this branch, and I would still be working off in this particular direction. That said, I'm open. I have as many as 8 inches to at least a fist in between the branches that are remaining. I've reduced the overall branching out here on the ends to 2, and in some cases 3 shoots. But for the most part, this branch will now have ample opportunity to build in girth and support the peach load that's developing here on this shoot. Well, as you can see, I've continued to make my way around. I've gotten nearly a third of the tree done, and we're working to a side that unfortunately has me back on a ladder, but it's largely due to this branch right here. And we can see in the case of where a branch is left from season to season that maybe should have been addressed years ago so that it won't create a problem for us. Now it's forced me to make a decision, particularly here at its base. What I'm situated with, or what I'm facing with regards to a decision, is 2 branches that were never really strong, and as they've grown kind of together, they've developed what we call an included bark ridge. A ridge of bark where each one's outermost layer has come together, and that bark really never goes away. It just gets walled in between the developing girth of the 2 shoots. What it results in is a very weak branch one day. And this branch is nearing the point where in future years, I would seriously worry about it splitting and causing damage to the overall scaffold system in the tree. We've chosen a branch here that allowing it to remain is going to give us some directional branching back out in a fairly open section of this tree's canopy. So one day we can add to the overall fruit load having some additional limb structure out in the direction of the camera. I like spreaders. There's an ideal way when we're doing any type of pruning that if we want to leave a small branch and get some direction and shape back into the tree's canopy, take a little time to spread those branches. About 60, well, closer to 90 days later, if they haven't blown out of the tree by then, you can actually remove the spreaders, and the limbs, in many cases, will have built some girth and some directional shape to the upper bark layer, and the branch will stay in the direction we've spread it. So we're going to move this down, catch our spreader just against the main limb, and we'll catch it just like that. And what we've done is we've accomplished spreading the new shoot away from the old scaffold limb. We've made a pruning cut to directionally get the growth out in the direction that we'd like it to grow in. I'm going to make one more cut on out there toward the end to help encourage these buds to laterally break and not leave us with any blind wood. Blind wood is that area that has no developmental buds or fruit or anything. It's just really not useful wood. So we'll get up there and make a cut on the end, and we've created a new limb in this peach tree. Having spread the branch out, making our way up, I'm going to look for once again a bud growing in the direction that I want this new shoot to be growing in. So I'm going to choose probably this one right here, just above my head, 1/4 inch above that bud, cut off the branch. It will continue to grow out in this direction. By making that cut, it's going to cause these to sprout out and develop into side shoots off of our new branch. What we're doing here is moving another additional branch out here. I'm going to get spaced out like I want it. Plenty of distance between my shoots. We'll come back in here. This shoot right here that I'm actually spread against is going to come off next season, but for right now, I'm going to just remove its overall height a little bit, allow its energy to go into these two side shoots right here. I'm actually going to come down and reduce the branch right there too. Actually, I'm going to come down to another shoot just like that. Leaving this branch right now for another 90 days or so will allow it to build up some wood on the upper portion. It will continue its direction in the shape that we want it to grow in. I'm creating 3 new limbs to help balance this peach tree back across its overall canopy. All right, viewers, as we are making our way, once again, we're going to have to do some make some corrective cuts to this particular branch. While we don't normally leave upright branching, we're going to take the overall height of this branch out and encourage its lateral or directional growth just from another tier up. And then we're going to remove an area of included bark ridge and lower branch that doesn't need to be there. So first off, my initial cut is to remove the weight. Not worried about being precise with not trying to be precise down in here just yet. I needed to get the weight off that branch so I can then make a very controlled cut with the pruning that's going to occur next. With my hand shears, once again, I'm going to take off the shoots that are kind of growing back in toward the center of the tree. It's not desirable. We want that open center. I've made the effort of making a pruning cut right here. I'm going to do the same thing for this branch over here and probably bring it down. I'm going to bring it down considerably. I'm going to bring it down to right about there. Now what we've done is we have made the best of a difficult situation. We had some upright growth, but now we've just brought it up simply a tier, and we're going to take it on out from there. So the developing wood in the years to come, we'll get it directioned back out towards myself, and hopefully the new wood going toward your camera and the new wood directing in this direction here will make for a very nice canopy in this peach tree. As we make our way up this limb, we just took a major crossing limb out. I'm going to work myself down to a more manageable height. Get some of that out of there. Now I'm going to decide how far down this particular branch I want to go and reduce my height. I want to leave directional shoots remaining so that this tree can continue putting the energy out and creating that open wide canopy that we've talked about. So with that said, I'm going to switch up loppers for shears, and I continue right on down till I have something roughly like that there. Nice distance between the limbs, excellent size, or some excellent sized fruiting wood to be supportive of the fruit crop to come. Well, folks, as you can see behind me, we've taken another peach tree and gone through and done the necessary or performed the necessary pruning to really ensure this year's peach crop, provided we don't get that frost or freeze that we're calling for in the next few weeks. But it really has. We've maintained the open vase shape of the tree in general. We've actually not removed every limb, but actually spread some new developmental limbs to improve the canopy in future years. We've brought a lot of weight down off the existing branches that were far and overhung well away from the trunk of the tree that could promote splitting and general damage just from fruit load. So overall, the tree has the majority of its peach producing wood remaining. Every one of these shoots are good and pencil sized, or most of them are number 2 pencil sized or better. And along those shoots are plenty of fruit buds for this year's crop. So join us for our next segment, and wishing everyone well until then.